The Calderon family wasn't your average traveling brood. Professor Nathaniel Calderon, a seasoned archaeologist with a penchant for decoding ancient languages, had made it his life's mission to chase mysteries across continents. His wife, Evelyn, was a former museum curator turned adventurer after marrying Nathaniel. Their 14-year-old daughter, Sienna, had grown up among pyramids and monasteries, her childhood more Indiana Jones than suburban mall. And then there was Toby, the family's sprightly 10-year-old armed with a drone, an obsession with cryptology, and a backpack full of snacks. This time the journey began in Petra, Jordan, the rose-red city half as old as time. Nathaniel had been invited by the Jordanian Ministry of Antiquities to study an unearthed chamber hidden beneath the famous treasury facade. Rumor had it that the chamber held remnants from the lost Nabatean civilization, scripts and relics not seen in any historical records. As they stepped off the plane and into the sweltering heat, Evelyn clutched a tattered manila folder under her arm. It held a letter, unsigned and unmarked, delivered weeks before the trip. The letter contained one thing: a rubbing of a sandstone tablet with inscriptions resembling both Nabatean Aramaic and something older. She had shown it to Nathaniel, who spent 3 sleepless nights trying to decipher it. "It's a linguistic hybrid," he had muttered, surrounded by coffee-stained notebooks and flickering lamps. "It's ancient, but not all of it belongs here." Now they were in Petra to find out if the source of the tablet was real or a very well-played hoax. First, the chamber was hidden behind a newly discovered tunnel below the treasury's steps, accessible only by crawling through a narrow crevice. Nathaniel, never one to shy away from tight spaces, led the way, followed by Evelyn, Sienna, and Toby, whose GoPro was strapped to his head. Inside, the air was thick with dust and history. Torchlight flickered off the sandstone walls. Glyphs danced across the surfaces, an unusual combination of geometric spirals and script. Evelyn reached out, tracing a carved line that spiraled inward to what looked like the shape of a phoenix. Nathaniel suddenly froze. "This isn't just a chamber, it's a cartographic cipher." "A what?" Sienna asked. "A map, but encoded." He pointed to a series of carvings that looked like stars. "See this cluster? It mirrors Orion's belt. But there's a distortion, like it's been shifted, as if to indicate a location." Toby, crouched nearby, let out a soft "whoa." His drone camera had caught something unusual: an indentation in the floor shaped like a triangle with 3 circles inside. Evelyn pulled out the rubbing from her folder. "It matched. What does it mean?" Toby asked. Nathaniel stood, brushing dust from his jeans. "It means the letter was real, and someone wanted us to find this." Back at their base, a small, dimly lit hostel tucked behind a spice market, the family laid out all their findings. Evelyn was piecing together fragments from a dig journal written by a German explorer who had vanished in 1903. His last entry spoke of a triangle beneath the stones of fire, a phrase eerily similar to what they found today. Nathaniel reviewed photos from the chamber while sipping lukewarm tea. "This goes deeper than Petra," he said quietly. "Look at this symbol." It was the same phoenix that Evelyn had traced, but it was overlaid with a Latin inscription, Vita sub terra. Life beneath the earth. "I've seen this before," Evelyn said slowly. "In Peru, in a restricted file from a Spanish monastery outside Cusco." Sienna raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying we're flying to South America next?" "I'm saying," Nathaniel said, "someone has stitched a trail across continents, and they want us to follow it." That night, Evelyn awoke to the sound of their window creaking open. She slipped from bed and padded silently across the room. A piece of paper had been tucked into the window shutter. She opened it and stared. It was a photo, sepia-toned, clearly old, of the exact same triangle with 3 circles pattern. Only this one was carved into the base of Machu Picchu. Scrawled beneath it in red ink were 3 words: "Next piece waits." By the time the Calderon family arrived in Cusco, Peru, the sun had dipped below the Andean peaks. Their goal wasn't the city itself, but a forgotten place nestled deep in the sacred valley. Monasterio de la Cruz Silenciosa. Once a Jesuit stronghold, it was now a cloistered monastery few had even heard of. A monk named Father Tomas greeted them at the worn gates without a word. Instead of formalities, he simply said, "You've come for the mirror." Nathaniel paused. "We don't even know what that is." Father Tomas gave a faint smile. "Then follow and you will." He led them through cold stone halls lit by candlelight. The monastery was silent except for the creak of wood and the faint hum of distant chanting. Eventually, they reached an iron door. The monk unlocked it, revealing a small chamber lined entirely with polished obsidian slabs, mirror-like but black as pitch. In the center sat a stone pedestal. Resting atop it was a flat disc etched with the same phoenix symbol from Petra, only this one had an eye carved at the center, ringed by symbols in Latin, Aramaic, and Quechua. It was discovered by the Jesuits in 1710, the monk said. They called it El Ojo del Silencio, the Eye of Silence. Nathaniel noticed that when he stood at a certain angle, one of the obsidian panels reflected not the room, but a flickering mural, a giant version of the three-circle triangle. It was as if the mirror showed another place entirely. This isn't just a mirror, Evelyn said. It's a projection, a coded one. Father Thomas nodded. The image reveals itself fully during the eclipse when the disc is placed on the altar beneath the monastery. Sienna glanced at her phone. The eclipse is tomorrow. That night, while the others slept, Sienna saw two shadowy figures near the monastery gate. One held what looked like a satellite phone. She hurried to wake Nathaniel. Someone's watching us, she whispered. The family gathered their things. Evelyn hid the disc in her travel bag. They barely slept. By morning, the group followed Father Tomas down a narrow tunnel beneath the monastery. This place, and he said, was once a fire chamber used by Inca priests, a connection point between light and earth. At the chamber's center was a basalt altar under a small aperture in the ceiling. As the eclipse began, a beam of sunlight passed through the disc, projecting a glowing map onto the far wall. It wasn't just a map of Peru. It showed 5 glowing locations: Petra, Jordan, Cusco, Peru, Alexandria, Egypt, Easter Island, and the southernmost point, Antarctica. Before they could speak, the heavy stone door slammed shut behind them. A tall man stepped from the shadows, dressed in a gray suit flanked by 2 armed men. "Thank you for finding it," he said smoothly. "We'll take it from here." Nathaniel stepped forward. "Who are you?" "Vincent Marrow," the man replied. "And unlike you, I don't stumble into secrets, I collect them." Toby's drone whirred to life, buzzing toward Marrow's face. The guards flinched. Nathaniel grabbed one and shoved him aside. Evelyn snatched the disc. Sienna and Toby bolted through a side passage. Gunshots echoed as they scrambled through the tunnel maze. Rocks tumbled, dust clouded their escape. They finally emerged outside through a forgotten crypt, bruised and breathless. Nathaniel clutched the disc. The map pointed to Alexandria. Evelyn looked at her phone. "We can be there by Monday." Sienna glanced back at the monastery. "Who is that guy?" Toby zoomed in on footage from his drone. Marrow had a tattoo, the same three-circle triangle. "He's part of something bigger," Toby said. "Whatever this is, it's not just history." Nathaniel nodded grimly. "It's a war for the truth." The Calderons arrived in Alexandria, Egypt, under a heavy, sand-colored sky. Nathaniel's heart pounded as their taxi wound through chaotic streets toward the harbor. Alexandria had once been the seat of the ancient world's greatest knowledge, home to the lost library. And according to the disc's projection, their next clue was hidden somewhere in its ashes. "We're not going to a museum," Evelyn said, scanning her notes. "We're going underground." Their destination, the Serapeum of Alexandria, an ancient temple buried beneath layers of modern city. Many believed the Serapeum held remnants of the library, secret chambers filled with scrolls long thought destroyed. But now, the Calderons were chasing something even rarer. A vault of glass mentioned in a Jesuit letter Evelyn had found years ago. A guide named Nura met them at a locked iron gate near the ruins. "Most people think the Serapeum ends here," she whispered, unlocking the gate. "But a deeper level exists, sealed since the Roman fire." She led them down winding steps into cool, echoing stone corridors. Eventually, they reached a sunken chamber. It was massive and empty, except for a raised platform at the center. Inlaid in the floor beneath it was something startling. A glass slab, roughly 6 feet long, etched with symbols identical to those on the obsidian mirror in Peru. But this time there was a new inscription. "Only light from the 3 shall reveal what sleeps." Nathaniel looked puzzled. 3 what? Suns? "No," Evelyn said slowly. "Mirrors." She pulled the obsidian disc from her bag and placed it in a small groove near the glass. Nothing happened until Toby turned on his phone's flashlight. The beam hit the disc, then bounced to the wall where two rusted bronze mirrors hung crookedly. Sienna adjusted them, and suddenly light shot across the chamber, landing on the glass slab. The floor shimmered. Then with a low hum, the glass began to descend. Beneath it, a spiral staircase carved into the earth. They descended slowly, surrounded by cool air and silence. At the bottom, they found a long hallway lined with empty niches. At the end was a vault door, ancient and metallic, with a circular indentation in its center, an exact match for the disc. Nathaniel pressed it in. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a circular chamber with glass walls like a forgotten observatory. Etched into the glass were star charts, symbols from across cultures, and coordinates stretching from the Arctic to the Nile. In the center was a pedestal holding a leather-bound book. Nathaniel opened it carefully. "It's not a book," he said. "It's a log." Written in a mix of Latin, Greek, and Arabic, the entries dated back over 2,000 years. Each described something called the Arc of Equinox, a structure or device hidden across 5 global points of balance. One entry read, "To awaken the Arc is to expose the buried truth, one that kings, temples, and tyrants feared." Another read, "The triangle binds the points, but only the one who carries the phoenix shall see the door." Suddenly the room dimmed. A shadow passed over the glass wall. A voice echoed from behind. "Fascinating, isn't it?" It was Vincent Marrow, again. "How are you always one step behind us?" Evelyn growled. Marrow smirked. "You mean one step ahead? I allowed you to do the dirty work." 2 of his guards stepped into the chamber, guns drawn. Marrow took the disc from the pedestal. "You've led me through Petra, Peru, and now Egypt. All that's left is the final key." Nathaniel looked at him. "Antarctica." Marrow nodded. "You should feel proud. The last family to make it this far died in 1937. Just then, Toby tapped a button on his watch. A high-pitched tone screeched through the chamber, enough to startle the guards. Sienna grabbed the book. Evelyn kicked Marrow square in the knee. Nathaniel yanked the disc from his hand. They ran. Outside the vault, they darted through the labyrinthine ruins. Noura met them at the gate with a dusty jeep already running. "Go," she shouted. "They're still inside." As the city swallowed them once more, Evelyn clutched the ancient logbook. Sienna broke the silence. "What's the Arc of Equinox?" Nathaniel replied quietly. "Something powerful enough to change everything we know about human history." Toby looked up. "So what now?" Nathaniel glanced down at the disc and the journal. "We head south to the last point." Evelyn exhaled. "To Antarctica." 2 weeks later, the Calderon family landed at a private Chilean base near the edge of the Antarctic Peninsula. Funded discreetly by a university friend of Evelyn's, the transport had been arranged quietly and urgently, because if Marrow reached the final point first, it could all be over. They weren't just racing across time anymore. They were racing for the truth of civilization itself. Wrapped in layers of cold-weather gear, they boarded a modified snowcat with a local guide named Luca, a soft-spoken glaciologist who had once mapped crevasses for NATO. "You sure you're not looking for a crashed Nazi sub?" Luca asked jokingly. Nathaniel smiled faintly. "No, just the thing the Nazis were probably looking for." Luca raised a brow. "That's worse. According to the ancient logbook, the Arc of Equinox could only be activated during a true equinox, when the Earth's axis perfectly aligned with the sun. That event was happening tonight. They had hours. Coordinates from the disc in the journal pointed them to a ridge beyond the Whalers Bay ruins. Most thought the area held nothing but rocks and ice, but beneath those rocks was something older, something buried. As they arrived, Sienna's tracker pinged. "There," she said, pointing to a jagged outcrop. A triangular stone, barely visible under the ice, marked the location. They began clearing snow, revealing a stone door with a small phoenix-shaped keyhole. Toby handed Nathaniel the disc. When placed into the keyhole, the ground shuddered. Ice cracked. The triangle split in 3. A shaft of blue light rose from the opening as the door descended into the ice, revealing a spiral staircase leading downward into the glacier. Ours inside was a corridor unlike anything they'd seen. Metal and stone fused together as if built by civilizations separated by centuries, but connected by purpose. Strange glowing lines pulsed along the walls. The corridor opened into a vast dome beneath the ice, its ceiling a translucent shell showing the stars above through refracted light. In the center stood the Ark. It was not a ship. It was a machine, a circular device of polished metal, obsidian, and crystal. Symbols from every known language lined its outer rim. This predates written history, Evelyn whispered. It might even be pre-human. Nathaniel approached a pedestal near the base. There were 5 slots, each shaped like the disc they carried. Toby frowned. There's only one disc. Sienna stepped forward. But we've already been to the other 4 sites. Maybe the machine doesn't need 5 discs. Maybe it needs one that's been to all 5 points. Nathaniel hesitated, then placed the disc into the center slot. The arc hummed. Lights spiraled across the chamber. Holographic projections emerged. Cities lost, languages forgotten, maps of continents before they broke apart. A deep voice, not from speakers but from the very structure itself, spoke in multiple tongues at once. This is the memory of Earth. The truth shall not serve the kings, it shall serve the people. Then the room dimmed, and footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them. Vincent Marrow entered, flanked by 2 of his remaining men. "You really didn't think I'd let you finish this alone, did you?" he said coldly. "Step away from the ark." Nathaniel stood firm. "You don't know what this is." "I know enough," Marrow replied. "Control the ark, control history. Rewrite it, shape the future." He raised a weapon. Before he could fire, Luca appeared behind him, swinging a snow axe with expert precision. One guard dropped. Toby launched his drone into the face of the second. Evelyn tackled Marrow, knocking the weapon aside. Sienna slammed her hand down on the pedestal. The arc pulsed with light and the entire room lifted, not physically but mentally. Everyone froze as holographic pulses surged into their minds. Visions of Earth's formation, of ancient knowledge, of messages left by forgotten architects. And then, silence, the ark shut down. And hours later, after authorities secured the site and Marrow was taken into custody, the Calderon sat quietly in a nearby shelter, sipping tea and catching their breath. "They called it the Ark," Sienna said. "But it wasn't carrying people, it was carrying truth." "A machine designed to store humanity's real history," Nathaniel said. "Unfiltered, uncorrupted. Like a backup drive for the planet," Toby added. Evelyn looked up from the journal. "But who built it?" Nathaniel stared out the window at the endless white. "That's the final mystery." A week later, a sealed crate arrived at a small university lab in London. Inside was the disc, now inert, and a note from Nathaniel. "Let the world decide how to tell its own story now." Somewhere far beneath the Antarctic ice, the Ark of Equinox waited, silent, preserved, not as a secret anymore, but as a beginning.